What up, Wizards? It's Dev, along with Igby's Tail. You don't see that every day, but we are making our way through Duskmourn, everybody. We're almost through this house. We got 20 more spoilers today and then 20 more preview cards tomorrow, culminating in the big speedrun set review we're going to do live on Twitch. But we got to get through what's left of these rooms today, so let's go ahead and look at what we got. Now, as usual, we're going to start the day with the stuff that's just kind of fine. These are magic cards, at the very least. We got Cackling Slasher along with Rip Chain, Razorkin, and Killer's Mask. Now, Cackling Slasher is 4 mana. It's 3 and a black for a 3/3 human assassin. So we start at Hill Giant stats. Let's see how much better we can do than that. Well, it has Death Touch. It does have Death Touch, and it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it if a creature died this turn. So if you're able to play it post-combat, you got a little 4 mana, 4/4 Death Touch. That's actually pretty playable in Limited. A Ripchain Razorkin also kind of feels like an upgraded Hill Giant to me. It's 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 5/3 human berserker with reach. And you can pay 2 and a red and sack a land to draw a card. So that'll let you put lands in your yard for Delirium, I guess, if you're having a hard time doing that. But just being able to draw cards in your aggro deck for, pretty high in terms of the activated abilities mana cost, but still being able to draw cards is helpful some of the time. And if nothing else, you have a 4 mana 5/3 reach, which is actually kind of okay stats, more than okay. Now, what I want to do is make a toilet joke about this card. The problem is that no one alive is old enough to remember when toilets had pull chains rather than little tabs that you push down to flush them. My grandparents' toilet, way back when I was really, really young, had one of those chains that you pull to flush the toilet, and they used to say, you got to rip that chain. You really got to rip that chain, make sure it flushes all the way. And so this card immediately makes me think of my grandparents' toilet. Interesting distinction, but we'll move on to Killer's Mask, which is 3 mana, 2 and a black for an artifact. It's an equipment that you equip for 2. But when it enters, you manifest Dread and attach Killer's Mask to that creature. The equipped creature has Menace. So little 3 mana, 2/2 Menace here that I guess also puts a card into your yard and stuff, and you can equip it for relatively low. It's still not very good, though. I'm sorry. The one thing I probably need to point out about this is that it is an artifact, so if it goes into your graveyard, that's an artifact for Delirium. It also helps you fuel Delirium by putting a card in your yard, obviously, but it also gives your survival guys Menace, which might matter when it comes to making sure they're still around for second main phase. Let's keep it going. We're going to look at Miasma Demon, Fear of Exposure, and Living Foam next. Now, Miasma Demon is 6 mana. It's 4 and 2 black for a 5/4 demon with flying. When it enters, you may discard any number of cards. When you do, up to that many target creatures each get -2/-2 till end of turn. So you'll never give any creature more than -2/-2 is how this card is worded. But if you want to come down on a couple of cards, then you can kill a couple of your opponent's guys in Limited, namely Manifest Dread guys. But there's all kinds of dudes that this thing can take out. The problem is you got to discard cards to it, but maybe that's an upside. Maybe the fact that you discard 2 to this actually makes you hit Delirium late in the game, so it's not terrible. Once it does hit play, it's a 5/4 flyer, and there are worse bodies than that. Fear of Exposure is kind of neat. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 5/4 enchantment creature. It's a nightmare. As an additional cost to cast this spell, tap 2 untapped creatures and or lands that you control. So up to 5 mana for a 5/4 trample, which is a rate that you'll kind of pay in Limited, I guess. It's only ever going to cost you the 1 green mana, but if you do have to tap down a couple of survival guys, I guess you're fine with that too, because then you'll get some kind of boost on your second main phase. So just another kind of interesting, design-wise way of making sure that those survival guys can actually do their thing. Now, in Standard, if survival guys are good enough, and there are a couple that look pretty good, then maybe this sees play, but I highly doubt it, to be honest with you guys. I mean, it's kind of got Convoke. In a way, it's kind of got Convoke that can only be convoked for 2 mana when you think about it. But, there are reasons you might want to do that in Standard. I just fear that there's way better green 3-drops for almost any situation. Now, Living Phone over here is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 2/1 artifact creature. It's a toy. And when it dies, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature with power 2 or less from among them, put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is probably the best card we've looked at so far, but it is 3 mana for a 2/1. Which I don't love. It's drawing a card when it dies, but there's no real guarantee that this card actually dies. It might sit on the table forever, or it might get exiled or something like that. It might get sunfalled a couple of turns later, and then think of all the things you could have spent that 3 mana on. That would have been better. So, I don't know. I like a death trigger. I really do. Even in this day and age when there's a fair amount of exile going around. But I'm just not sure that this is better than most of the other 3-drops you could be playing, almost regardless of what deck you're on. This page is full of cards like that, right? Living Phone and Fear of Exposure are both cards that may have seen play 10 years ago. They're just not as good as they would have once been. Now to finish off the okay cards of the day, we're going to look at some removal. Here's Unnerving Grasp, Beastie Beatdown, and Winter's Intervention. Now Unnerving Grasp is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and manifest dread. See, this isn't bad, because it's basically a Mana War that also says non-land permanent, right? So Mana War is mostly creatures and stuff, or at least these effects mostly bounce creatures when they're on a body, but being able to bounce a non-land permanent, we're kind of talking a little bit, that is way, way, way better. Also, Mana War doesn't put a card into your yard, and Mana War is not a sorcery that can be like flashback with different stuff. I'm not saying you like Snapcaster Mage this, but there's all kinds of reasons why sometimes a creature is better than a spell, and sometimes a spell is better than a creature, so you have to factor all that stuff in. I'm not sure that it's really going anywhere, especially given the sorcery speed, but I'll take a body and some tempo some of the time, so like I wouldn't put it past this to see some amount of play, but I really don't think it quite gets there. Beastie Beatdown over here is a red and a green for a source. Choose target creature you control and target creature an opponent controls. You probably see where this is going with the name like Beatdown and all that. If you have Delirium, then you get to put a +1/+1 counter on the guy you control, and then the creature you control bites the other guy. Deals damage equal to its power to the other creature. So a 2 mana bite effect at sorcery speed is probably not super standard playable, even with the +1/+1, but this is more than fine limited removal. The thing that gets me about this card is that I've seen no less than 2 people, I know it's not a ton of people, but a couple of people are really mad at the use of the phrase beatdown on this card, because that's so not Magic the Gathering, and what are they thinking, and oh my god, beatdown, the next thing's going to be SmackDown, and then WWE Raw, and then where are we going with our Magic cards? Is this even fantasy anymore? Do you guys remember? You probably weren't playing back then. I've been playing a really long time. In the late 90s, they released what was called the Beatdown box set. So the word beatdown has actually kind of been used in Magic the Gathering for over 25 years at this point. So I just wanted to point that out. So it's nothing new, is all I'm saying. You should go back to the 90s in a time machine and complain about it then. Winter's Intervention is up next. 2 mana, 1 and a black for an instant that deals 2 damage to a creature, and you gain 2 life. So a Pharika's Cure, but it's a little bit easier to cast. And believe it or not, Pharika's Cure actually saw like sparing play back in the day, whether it was in sideboards or even sometimes in made boards when the format got a little bit too aggro. And this is a pretty good piece against aggro. You know, it's no lightning helix or anything, but it's not even the next best thing, but it's probably the 3rd or 4th best thing, and that matters. Now let's start looking at the decent commons and uncommons of the day, the actual, perhaps even, dare I say, playable commons and uncommons of the day, with a couple of rooms that we got to see. Here's Surgical Suite and Hospital Room. Now, Surgical Suite is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an enchantment. When you unlock this door, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your yard to the battlefield. And Hospital Room is 4 mana, 3 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. So, okay, you know, it's not like Innkeeper's Talon or Luminarch Aspirin or anything like that, but it is 4 mana for an effect kind of close to that. One of the best things about Aspirin or Innkeeper's Talon is that you don't have to attack. It's just the beginning of combat. Put a +1/+1 counter on a guy. Actually having to attack with a creature is much worse. It doesn't look like it's that much worse, but it kind of is. But it's still a fine effect. And then this one over here, Surgical Suite, is basically Helping Hand or Recommission or a bunch of, you know, low ball like mana cost white cards that we've seen here in recent sets that can reanimate a small guy. It costs more than Helping Hand, but it also puts an enchantment on the battlefield in this pretty sweet little room that you can unlock a little bit later. So it might actually be like a 1 to even 4 of in these like blue-white Helping Hand decks, but I wouldn't be surprised to see again at least the 1 of, because it's pretty good. But Painter's Studio and Deface Gallery I think I like even more. Now Painter's Studio is 2 and a red for an enchantment. It's a room. When you unlock this door, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them until the end of your next turn. Deface Gallery over here is 2 mana, 1 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever you attacking creatures you control, get +1/+0 until end of turn. I am tickled by the fact that this only costs 1 and a red and is actually stapled to another card. They didn't have to do that. What they've done here, little Magic history lesson, I know how much you love these, is they've printed Orcish Oriflamme in its original form. In case you've never heard this story, Orcish Oriflamme, supposed to be 4 mana, 3 and a red for an enchantment. Attacking creatures you control get +1/+0. The problem is that card was originally printed in Alpha, the first ever Magic set, at 1 and a red. So half of what it's supposed to cost, it was printed at. And as soon as Beta came out, a little less than a year later, they went ahead and fixed that. Orcish Oriflamme costs 4 mana from Beta onwards, but I always felt like Orcish Oriflamme may have been actually playable at 2 mana, so they've decided to just give it to us. But not only did they give us Orcish Oriflamme, again, they gave it to us stapled to another card that's already halfway decent. It's a Thrill of Possibility that costs 50% more mana here on the left side. But, again, when you staple it to an Orcish Oriflamme that makes your aggro deck like incredible, then it's really, really good, man. Like, note too that you can play Defaced Gallery on like turn 3, turn 4, get to attacking, whatever, and then just later when you need cards, you unlock the Painter's Studio, which is pretty good. Plus, Defaced Gallery is a non-creature spell, so the turn that you play it, it's going to give your, you know, Monastery Swift Spears and your Emberheart Challengers the prowess boost. It's going to give Slickshot the sort of pseudo prowess boost, because again, non-creature spells. So not only are they going to get the prowess, but they're also going to get the +1/+0 when they attack. This card's pretty good, man, I'm telling you. It's like a pseudo Anthem effect for like Go Wide Tokens decks or Goblins decks or whatever that also staples card advantage. Like, man, this one's pretty good, and I'm kind of surprised that it's uncommon. But you know what? Get out. Get out. I'm not talking about you. You shouldn't leave. Actually, you should stay as long as this video runs at the very least, and then watch another one. I'm talking about Magic cards. We got Get Out right here, and also Exorcise, which when you think about it, is the same name for a card. They really broke out the thesaurus for this one. This is the 4th time I've done this take because I can't say thesaurus. So, nailed it that time, baby. But let's look at Get Out, Leave right now. It's the end of you and me. Nobody else remembers that song in 2024. I'm sorry. My wife was born on the exact same day, the exact same year as JoJo, so I remember that song better than most people. But anyway, what does Get Out actually do? It's a good movie, first of all, but it's also 2 blue mana for an instant. Choose 1 counter target creature or enchantment spell. All right, what's the other thing? Return 1 or 2 target creatures and or enchantments that you own to your hand. Fine. It's a fine Magic card, man. I mean, it's an Essence Capture that also throws enchantments on there. So you kind of get a Remove Soul or an Essence Scatter. I guess we stopped doing Remove Soul. It's Essence Scatter now. But also part of an Annul. All right. It's like this. It's a pretty wide spread of targets. And honestly, in Standard, there's a ton of decks where like those are the only things in their deck. You know what I mean? Like between the few creatures that they play. And like Caretaker's Talent, Intaker's Talent. You'll sometimes see like Takasia's Welcome, random Virtues they try to play out of exile. Like there's a ton of enchantments in Standard right now. So in just about any deck you come up against, this has a valid target just because of the enchantments thing. But you add creatures to the mix and you're countering Atraxas and Sheldreds and stuff, it feel pretty good. You know, go first against Mono Red, counter their Slickshot. I mean, the card has a lot of pretty good stuff on it, but if you have creatures with ETB triggers, or if you want to save multiple creatures from a Sunfall at the same time, then like this will help you do that too. The card is all around pretty slick. Exorcise down here is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a sorcery. Exile target artifact, enchantment, or creature with power 4 or greater. Again, it's going to hit something in Standard, man. Really, I hate that it's sorcery speed. You know, I got to point out that would be better if it was instant. Some people hate when I say that, but like it's true. Like being sorcery speed really, really hurts a Magic card. That's something that you got to point out when you see it. But I don't think sorcery speed kills this to sort of throw a bone to the people who hate when I say that. I don't think sorcery speed kills this card. We've got plenty of 2 mana sort of disenchant effects in Standard that could take out artifacts and enchantments, but we don't have a whole lot of things that can also take out a large guy, at least at this mana cost. But now for my favorite uncommon of the day. It is kind of a weird one. It's Keys to the House. I called this card would exist at some point, you know, but it's just a single mana for an artifact. You can pay 1 and sacrifice it to search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle up, or you can pay 3, tap it, and sack it to lock or unlock a door of a room you control, activate only as a sorcery. So interesting, first of all, that you can lock a room back so that you can unlock it again and get any like eerie effects or other unlock bonuses or whatever. That's kind of neat, but I think most of the time you're obviously going to use this to unlock like a 7 or 8 mana door, and there's a few of those, right? There's a 7 mana blue door that's like a super duper Panharmonicon that doubles up any triggered ability you could imagine. That thing costs a lot. This unlocks it. There's a black door that's really good for like aristocrat stacks. It's like return all the creatures to your to play from your graveyard or whatever it is. And that thing costs like 8 or 9 mana. So with Keys to the House, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity cost, and yeah, there's some mana tied up into it. Takes up a slot in your deck and all that. But like this can unlock anything for 3 mana, and that is ridiculous considering you play this on turn turn 1. You play like a 2-mana room on turn 2, and then you unlock it no matter what the unlock cost is on turn 3. And that could be a good way to start a game. But if you can't do that, it's just a little egg that you crack. It's like a Wayfarer's Bauble or something like that. Just a little egg that you crack to go get a basic, put it in your hand, and like that's not bad either. It really isn't. Now, this won't be the only thing we see today that allows you to just unlock a room, and I think that the other card that we're going to look at that does that is probably a little more standard playable, but it's not as cheap as this. This being just 3 mana to unlock whatever you want when the time comes is actually pretty outrageous, and your opponent's not like going to be able to really respond to the trigger or anything because you sacrifice it as part of the trigger, or as part of the activated ability, I should say. So by the time this thing goes off, it's in the graveyard. They can't target it and stop you from doing the ability or anything. It's just going to happen. There's not much they could do about it. So I think that this is actually not really good, but like more playable than a lot of people think it is, because a lot of people are just going like, oh, that's neat, and kind of skipping over it. I think there's real implications for this. Ooh, we got a new card. I just did a reload. We're not going to look at it yet. We'll look at it last, and that'll be the first time that I read it. So that'll be fun, but we should move on to the rares here and look at Waltz of Rage first. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 red for a sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature, including yours. Until end of turn, whenever a creature you control dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. Okay, so this is the first rare of the day, but I also kind of like it. Not a lot. It does require that you have a creature in play. That creature needs to be reasonably big if you're actually hoping to sweep the board, which means that it probably needs to be a 4-drop creature. So if you can find like a 4-mana 5/5 or even a 4-mana 4-power creature, which is very easy to do, then I think you're probably going to, succeed in completely sweeping the board on turn 5. If you're doing this on curve. And that's pretty good because red just really doesn't have a whole lot of cards that do that right now. Like, I've been looking for a good 4 to 5 mana sweeper for big red, and I've been resorting to like Brotherhood's End, which you should probably play in big red anyway, but I've also been resorting to like the Elder Dragon War, and you shouldn't have to do that unless you have like a real reason to put the card in your deck. It's not a very good sweeper at all. But Waltz of Rage, again, even with some of the restrictions on it, it shouldn't be too hard to find like a meaty dude in your big red deck to just take everything out. And if you do end up taking out a couple of your own guys, there may be reasons that you want to do that. I think we just saw that piggy bank, and like whenever it dies, you get a treasure token, so you play it on turn 2. If it hasn't died yet, it'll die to your own sweeper, give you a treasure. I guess you're fine with that. But there's also, just the fact that it draws you a bunch of cards, effectively draws you some cards. And, your curve has to be right to play the cards. But that said, you paid 5 mana for Waltz of Rage. So if your curve stops at 5, you should be able to play just about anything you get off the top of your library with the card. And again, there may be multiple things lower on the curve than this that you really don't mind dying for all kinds of reasons. They have death triggers, you want the cards or whatever, you're looking for something important in your deck, this will help you get to it. I don't know, man. I just think as far as 5 mana sweepers go, in red especially, this is a pretty unique, like creative one. I like the design on it. And even though it does have some real restrictions, I think that it could be borderline playable. But we also got Dissection tools today. This is 5 mana for an equipment. It equips by sacrificing a creature, but also when it enters, you manifest dread and then attach Dissection tools to that creature. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has death touch and lifelink. So for 5 mana, you get a 4/4 death touch lifelink, which I don't think is good enough for standard, but it's like really, really close, Like a 4/4 death touch lifelink is actually pretty serious little pile of stats and keywords. But what I like most about this is that you can just equip it to anything for literally no mana. You do have to sack a creature, but like, I want to do that. 9 times out of 10, I kind of want to do that anyway. Also, what's kind of important about this is that even though it's 5 mana, which is just too much, it is a free and repeatable sacrifice outlet. That's actually kind of tough to deal with. Bartolome costs 2 mana. That's one of the best free repeatable sack outlets we've ever seen. So I don't want to compare it too much to Bartolome, but you can just cut down Bartolome. You can just go for the throat Bartolome. You can't do that with this card. It's just a free repeatable sack outlet. And in the meantime, when it is going on creatures, even if they're small, like if you put it on a 1/2, like a Novice Inspector or something, then suddenly it becomes like a 3/4 death touch lifelink, which is formidable almost no matter what's on the other side of the table. So it's really difficult to swing into this card when it's on the other side of the table without your opponent killing your best guy and gaining life. And then even if you kill the guy it's attached to, it's attached to something else. There's so many tokens going around in Standard right now that the average deck has like 3/1/1s out for no apparent reason. Like, they got things to sack, and they got little stuff to put this on too. I'm telling you, I don't think this card is like that Standard playable, but I think it might be one of those cards that you look at and you completely dismiss, and then like a month later, it just rails you on the arena or whatever. So like, I'm telling you, just keep your eye out for this, because I think it's slightly better than it may appear at first glance. But next, let's look at Rip, everybody. Rip Spawn Hunter is 4 mana, 2 a green and a white for a 4/4 legendary human survivor with survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Rip is tapped, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is Rip's power. Put any number of creatures and or vehicle cards with different powers from among them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Boy, people are kind of freaking out about this guy today. I gotta say, that's why he's like in the middle of the rares for today. But I have a little less confidence, unlike the first couple of cards we looked at. Like, everyone's bagging on him and they suck or whatever, and I like them. This card I don't like as much as everybody else does, and I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I swear I'm not. But I've seen people all over Twitter today kind of excited about this. It is a cool little idea for a commander, and if it does survive, if it taps down to like crew a vehicle or something and it survives, then it can get you like real cards the turn it comes into play. But it can also just whiff, the fact that it gets creatures of different power means that it's never going to get, the same creature off the top of your library. And not only that, it can't get, a 2/2 and a 2/3. It can't get a 3/4 and a 3/3. And it's, I don't know, you probably have those guys in your deck, you know what I mean? Like, you probably have Preacher of the Schism and some other 2-power guy in your deck, and like, you can't get both. So I don't know, dude. I don't know about that bit. But also, it could just like not hit anything that matters. It could hit like 3 lands and a sorcery or an instant, and then like it doesn't do anything, and that's kind of lame. I feel like the amount of times this card can either miss or not get you the full potential value is gonna hurt like a little bit. It's also green-white, and I don't mean to like bag on green-white. There's not really much to do with green-white in Standard at the moment. Although there's some buzz about an Abzan deck popping up, like an Abzan mid-range deck, but I'm just not sure that this is going to be it, Chief. You need to play a pretty high number of both creatures and vehicles in your deck, and or vehicles. And again, I'm just not sure there's a whole lot of decks in Standard that want to play enough creatures and vehicles to reliably hit real card advantage on this. But there are good things about the card, man. There really are. I mean, as I've already pointed out, it can get you more than one card in your hand the turn it comes into play. And I feel like if it ever does that, then it is a very good Magic card. But I think the times that's going to happen are actually like less often than you might expect. So I'm not like too sold on Rip, but I can see why people are excited. But up next, we're going to look at Ghostly Dancers, dancing for money. Do what I haunt you to do. Nobody's going to get any of my references today. Am I the oldest man in the world? I might be. Ghostly Dancers is 5 mana, 3 and 2 white for a 2/5 spirit with flying. When it enters, return an enchantment card from your yard to your hand, or unlock a locked door of a room you control. It also has Eerie, so whenever you Eerie, you get a 3/1 spirit with flying. Okay, so let's get the bad thing out of the way. First of all, it's a 5 mana 2-power guy, which is not super great most of the time, but also it returns the thing from your graveyard to your hand. And like the way the card works, I would really like for this to return the enchantment to play, right? So I immediately get a 3/1, but I guess it didn't want to give you a 5/6 on 2 bodies, both of which have flying for 5 mana. But honestly, I wouldn't think that would be that broken in this day and age. All that said, this is a ridiculous Eerie ability. It's just one of the better ones, man. Every time I get an enchantment, I get a 3/1 flyer. Good God. Like, the turn this comes into play, or the turn after this comes into play at least, I can probably get a couple of 3/1s. I could probably get 6 power flying the turn after this comes into play, given that I've still got cards in my hand, right? So I will say 5 mana is a little bit steep. So like by this point in the game, you actually get the guy down. He survives a turn. Having like 2 enchantments in your hand is kind of a tall order on like turn 6, but maybe you can make it happen. Plus, the guy does put an enchantment into your hand from your yard. So if your opponent blew away your Caretaker's talent, your Innkeeper's talent, anything else you may have been talented at early in the game, then like, yeah, get it back, play it again. There we go. Bada bing. So like, that's pretty good. But what I haven't really talked about yet here is that this is the other card that can just unlock a locked door, which is nuts. Especially considering that is how you can get that 3/1 the turn it comes into play. You play a room earlier in the game, you play this for 5 mana, unlock that room, get a 3/1. So 2/5, a 3/1, and an unlocked room all for 5 mana is probably worth it, especially if the door you're unlocking is going to cost 7 or 8 anyway. Now, at this moment, 3 cards remain on the day, and at least 2 of them I don't have like anything negative to say about whatsoever, and the other one I've never read before. We'll get there when we get there, but we're going to look at Marina Vendrell here. A Vendrell, of all people. Vendrell hanging out. This is a WUBRG, so that's 5 mana, 1 of each color, for a 3/5 legendary human warlock. When Marina Vendrell enters, is it Marina? It could be Marina. Reveal the top 7 cards of your library. Put all enchantment cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now you can tap this thing to open or close a room you control at sorcery speed. So again, man, 5 mana to open a room, geez. But the thing is, this thing can open multiple rooms and you don't have to jump through hoops or anything. It just opens the door. Just tap it to open the door, which is kind of nuts, dude. I'm pretty sure that's banana bread, so I like that about the card. But obviously the best thing about the card is the unfreaking believable card advantage it's probably going to get you when it comes into play if you built your deck correctly, and you probably did. All enchantments from the top 7, dude. Like, even accounting for lands, this is probably going to put like 3 cards into your hand. Again, if your deck is built right, but even if your deck is not built right, it's probably going to put 2 cards in your hand, and I will totally take 5 mana for a 3/5 that draws 2 cards. And this is another card, just like the key, that can like close or lock, I guess. It's weird that we've seen 2 different terms for that, but this is a translation, so that's probably the explanation for that. But yeah, it's cool that you can lock rooms back, and it's cool that this lady can do that for you if you feel like doing that. It's also just like a WUBRG enchantments commander, and I'm not sure we really had that yet. I mean, we may have, but I don't think we had a 5-color enchantments commander quite on this level. Play it out of the command zone and draw 4, It dies, play it out of the command zone again, draw 3 or 5 or whatever it is. It seems really, really good to me. But let's move on to Unidentified Hovership, which is, in my mind, the best card of the day. But also keep in your mind that I haven't read the last card yet, which is Mythic, so who knows. But Unidentified Hovership is 3 mana, 1 and 2 white for a 2/2 vehicle with flying. When it enters, exile up to 1 target creature with toughness 5 or less. When Hovership leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner manifests dread. You can crew this for 1. Freaking yikes. Seems pretty good, man. First of all, you can hit your own stuff with this, I guess, if you feel like it, to repeat. Well, you're not repeating into the battlefield triggers, but maybe you're hitting a small like token creature with this because your opponent doesn't have anything to target. Well, at that point, yeah, you won't get your token back. Of course you won't, but you will get a larger token and a card in your graveyard. Just want to throw that out there. But obviously, the best thing about this card is that it is one of the better like Fiend, Hunter, Banisher, Priest style effects that we've seen in a really good long time. We just lost Brutal Cathar to rotation a couple of sets ago, and that card saw a lot of play over its standard lifespan. And I imagine this may not see all the play in the world, but it will see some play. Now, it is a 3-drop that dies to cut down, but when it does so, your opponent doesn't actually get their guy back, which is the best part of the card, obviously. It's kind of reminiscent of Skyclave Apparition in that way, although it's not quite Skyclave Apparition. It hits bigger stuff than Skyclave Apparition. This can actually take out a Sheldred. It can actually take out a Biza, and those are really good lines in the current standard. Yet another way, by the way, to exile an Aclazotz forever. There's a couple of ways to do that in this set, so kiss that card goodbye in the 5-drop slot. I hope you had fun, but still, this is obviously very good. It doesn't die to go for the throat. It flies over a lot of what your opponent's doing. It'll block a Deep Cavern Bat. It'll take their Deep Cavern Bat on turn 3 and then block any subsequent Deep Cavern Bats while also occasionally getting in for 2 mana, or 2 damage rather. And it crews for only 1, so your own Deep Cavern Bats can crew the card. Just a really, really sick piece of cardboard here, dude. A removal spell that's also a 2/2 flyer that doesn't die to one of the most played removal spells in the entire set, and is an Oblivion Ring effect that doesn't actually give them their creature back. Just sign me up somewhere for this. Where do I go? To quote Dale Gribble, it's abducted my heart. But let's move on to what I believe so far, at least, is the final card of the day. And the only thing I know about it is that it's the final Overlord. It is the Black Overlord, but I don't know what this actually does. So let's read the card for the first time together, why don't we? Overlord of the balemurk is 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a 5/5 enchantment creature. It's an avatar horror. It has impending 5, but it only costs 2 mana. Okay. So the largest impending cost we've seen so far, but also the cheapest impending cost we've seen so far, if that makes any sense. Whenever Overlord of the balemurk enters or attacks, mill 4 cards. Then you may return a non-avatar creature or a planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. I'd say that even if you're paying the 5 mana for this, like the full cost, then it's still okay. Like a 5 mana 5/5, you could do better than that in terms of stats. You could put a keyword ability on it or something like that, but just a 5 mana 5/5 that's almost sure to find something to replace itself with if the opponent has a removal spell. That's pretty good, but it also mills, helping you hit delirium, reanimation, whatever. In your reanimator deck, you play this on turn 2. Right? And you just like go ahead and mill yourself. And it sucks that it's sorcery speed, but let's not talk about that right now. You mill yourself on turn 2, and you're able to get something. You could even be a planeswalker, right? You get your Liliana to play on turn 3 if you play this on turn 2. That's pretty good curving. And then with impending 5. So what does that mean, right? So it goes to impending 4 on turn 2, and then impending 3, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. So the end of turn 5, it becomes a creature, meaning it can start attacking on turn 6 and getting you this value repeatedly. And I feel like if it does attack, you know, like let's say you play it for 5. Let's just say that. You play it for 5 mana and it gives you this ETB trigger and your opponent can't do anything about it, and it's actually alive to attack again the next turn and you get more value. That's probably stupid good, which I think is the scientific term. But again, we're probably... Aclazot sure does have a lot of things that can exile it, and I guess all those things can also exile this, but this gets you immediate value when it enters play. And again, if they don't have the exile spell or just the removal spell right then and there, it's going to get you even more value and just start burying your opponent. I could even see like a lot attacking in with this, knowing it's going to die in combat to a double block or even a large creature, just because like you can guarantee yourself some value in the form of a creature or a planeswalker or whatever. It can't find itself, and it can't find other overlords, which I think is kind of funny, but it can find just, 98 point something % of creatures in standard, and that matters for a lot. This guy's great too, man. A self-mill spell to get you card advantage in the form of a creature or a walker, and is big itself, and if it ever actually starts attacking, like, come on, dude. I think this card is pretty stellar, dude. I'm not going to give it like a 5 out of 5 or anything, but I'd rate it pretty good on the Yelp. The Yelp. I really am an old man. But anyway, yeah, let me know how you felt about this today, because maybe I'm just like super off and very wrong on this particular card and every other card of the day, but I don't know. I think I had cogent points to make. But that's it for Haunted Spoilers today, everybody, and that's basically it almost for preview season. That's the end for couch preview videos, as far as I know, at least. If they release any more today, I might get back on the couch and put something out. But tomorrow we're going to be doing our full set review speed run over on Twitch, so make sure you follow over there. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. And if you don't want to hit that link and follow now and wait for the thing, just come by at like 8-ish p.m. tomorrow EST, Eastern Standard Time, and I'll be on Twitch reviewing these cards as quickly as possible. And by the way, guys, just want to say before I get out of here today, thanks for a great preview season. I've already mentioned this a couple of times, but we're getting much better views this preview season. I've gotten far more subscribers than I normally get in a preview season. So if you're new around here, or if you're returning and you resubscribe, or you're rewatching the preview videos or whatever because WUBRG was great and you think Duskmourn's awesome, I just want to say thanks. I really do. Again, whether you're new or returning, it really does mean a lot to me. I appreciate you guys. It was a great spoiler season, and Duskmourn looks like a pretty great set to me. But hey, I'm not signing off entirely. In case you didn't know this, I actually do videos not during preview season. It seems like a lot of people don't know that, but if you want to see any of these cards in action, we do gameplay videos, we do deck techs, we do the top 3 new decks of the week and stuff. I'm always putting stuff out like 4 times a week. I got videos. We got a whole series right now where every single day of my life I review 10 random Magic cards on Scryfall, and it's probably the most fun I'm having doing content creation. So come by there. We have a blast, man. I do a lot of stuff here on YouTube. I'd appreciate it if you want to check that out. But if you don't, that's fine. I'm just glad that you're here for spoiler season. It means a lot to me. But with that, I'm going to get out of here, guys. Make sure you have a good rest of your day and a good rest of your week. Make sure you hit the like button before you hit the lights. Sutton, is that your name? I'm not sure. I freaked one person out a lot right now. But apart from that, you can sub to the sandwich because we have a lot of content coming up. Like I mentioned, sleepers, top 25, 50 list. Who knows this time around? So again, sub to the content. But apart from that, I'm donezo for this one. So I'm Deb from The Place. I'll catch you cats later. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Make sure you spread love and be kind. All right, let's get on out of here. Whew. Gonna have a good time tonight leaving this room right now. leaving this room. Huh. I can't, It would seem as though I'm locked in this room. And I'm sure that's fine. I'm sure it's nothing weird at all, and it has nothing to do with Duskmourn, and I'm fine. I'm sure that these aren't famous last words, and my house is not about to swallow me, or if I ever do make it out of this room, I'll be swallowed by a sandworm Beetlejuice style. I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's fine.